Mario Kart, of course, is Nintendo's iconic racing series, and today I thought I'd take a look at all the major installments on Nintendo's home consoles and give them mini reviews. Yeah, the series is going to overlook the handheld Mario Karts, but that's only because I haven't played any of them besides Mario Kart DS. Let's start with the original Super Mario Kart. So this game introduces the basic formula of the series, where you race around Mario-themed circuits, use different power-ups against other opponents, and try to land at least in the top 4 in the race to move on in the single-player mode. The roster's pretty familiar, though interestingly you can play as Donkey Kong Jr. owing to the fact that Donkey Kong Country reboot hadn't come out yet. Now, I gotta level with all of you, I just don't really care for Super Mario Kart. It's technically quite impressive for the Super Nintendo, but I have a lot of pet peeves with it. For one, even though it uses Mode 7 to simulate a 3D environment, the tracks still feel quite barren and dull. I'm also not a fan of having the screen split across to show the circuit map below. It's really pointless since none of the tracks are all that complicated anyway. And lastly, I hate that the NPCs don't use the same items as you. They all just have their own items and weapons they can use whenever they damn well please. I guess it's nice since the question mark blocks don't regenerate, but it really is some bullshit. Plus, I kinda have a hard time telling where I am, because the game's not real 3D, but this is really the most minor of my gripes. I do think that the game has a nice aesthetic and pretty good music. Some of the power-ups are damn near useless, like the magic feather. It's not a horrible game, but nowhere near as enjoyable as pretty much all other Mario Karts. Well, the next entry was Mario Kart 64, and this one was at least in 3D, even if the characters are still 2D sprites. This was the first game in the series where all the characters use the same items. We now have Wario and DK in the roster. We also have Toad's Turnpike, which introduces us to traffic as an element in a Mario Kart game. Overall, it resembles later Mario Kart titles way more than Super Mario Kart did. There are still some quirks, such as how you still have to make it in the top 4 in order to be allowed to continue a cup, but it's not as punishingly hard as Super Mario Kart. The gameplay is also way more refined, but things like sliding and braking are a little bit harder to do. Also, some characters like Bowser and DK are really hard to play as, so the roster may not be the most balanced out there. However, this is easily one of my favorite Nintendo 64 games. I just love the tracks, like the desert one with the train, Mario Circuit, which has been brought back in a remade form, and Choco Mountain. Yoshi's Valley, where you can't tell who's in the lead until the finish line, is also interesting. Now, being a really early N64 title, the graphics aren't the best for the system, and even I'm a little off-put by how the characters are sprites and not 3D models. In some levels, it can be hard to accurately determine where your character is. However, I know this is nostalgia talking, but this is easily my favorite Mario Kart game. It's definitely not the most beginner-friendly entry in the series, but I just love the circuits, the music, and the racing feeling. Then we come to Double Dash on the GameCube. This is an interesting title since I didn't really grow up playing it, and I've been introduced to it properly only in recent years. But I can say without hesitation that it's probably the most unique Mario Kart of the bunch. For one, you choose 2 drivers instead of 1 and can switch between them during the race. This also means you can carry 2 items, which is interesting. The game also gave you a selection of cars with different stats to unlock, which is also interesting. Also, the characters have unique special items which only they can use, although I hate that you can get the triple Koopa shells only as the Koopa Troopas. Double Dash really took me the longest of all the Mario Karts to get into, and I do have to say that it has a bit of an issue with character balancing. It's really hard to get a balanced pair, since you're more than likely to switch characters at least once during a race, if not by choice. You're kind of forced to learn how to play as 2 different characters. Of course, you can try to learn how to be awesome as just one character, but that's a bit tricky. Some of the circuits in this game are pretty neat. I particularly love Sherbet Land and the traffic levels, but this Mario Kart has probably the most sadistic Rainbow Road I've ever seen. It's nigh impossible. Double Dash is another title that's hard to recommend because it's so different from the later Mario Karts, but that's also its strength. So if you want to experience a slightly different Mario Kart experience, I do recommend it. Next we have Mario Kart Wii, and I can already say without reservation that this is the runner-up for my second favorite game in the series. Not only did it just have a crazy huge cast of characters, but also tons of vehicles, including somewhat controversially, bikes in addition to karts. However, this game went back to the traditional Mario Kart style, and I think the gameplay is super solid, whether you play it on the GameCube controller, Classic controller, or even just the regular Wii mode. The bikes are also an interesting addition, and I love that you can get a boost from doing wheelies, although the trade-off is that you can't obviously turn while doing so. There are other ways to get boosts, such as doing tricks during jumps, which was a really good addition in my view. Granted, it maybe forces you to focus on doing tricks and makes the driving a little bit more challenging, but it's a nice addition. However, once again, all the items are usable by all characters, and I think the selection of new tracks is quite good. I love the bouncy mushrooms, the farm, the snowy DK mountain, and even though it looks terrifying, I quite enjoy the Rainbow Road in this one. You also get a selection of Mario Kart tracks from past games, and this is also cool. I just love driving the Mario Kart 64 tracks in this game, but the other tracks are also excellent. In fact, I used to think that it was a mistake from Nintendo to include the old tracks since I like them so much more than the game's own tracks. But that's not to say Mario Kart Wii's tracks are bad. Overall, I really don't have anything bad to say about this game. Some of the cars are almost useless, but once you get good enough, they do serve as an interesting challenge. And finally, Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 8 introduced the anti-gravity mode, where you can get boosts from running into other characters. It's a neat idea, but I do have to say Mario Kart 8 might be the least inventive of the games up till now. Sure, you can customize the car or bike now, instead of just picking a different car, but I generally just default to a certain type, so this feature didn't really add much. Plus, you can't do wheelies with the bikes anymore, which is honestly a little disappointing, and during multiplayer it does take an awful long for some players to choose what they want to do. Now the game looks gorgeous, I do think the tracks are fun, and you can even get new tracks by downloading them, but honestly, Mario Kart 8 didn't really add a whole lot new to the series. However, it is easily one of the best one-on-one racing games for the Wii U, and it's also on the Switch. So I would definitely still recommend it. And that's all from me for now. I'm TheHande, and see you on the next one.